Welcome to Follow the Brand TV. I am your host, Grant McGaugh, CEO of 5-Star BDM, a 5-star personal brand and business development company. B for brand, D for development, and M for masters. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey through another deep dive into the world of personal branding and business development using compelling personal stories, business conversations, and tips to improve your brand. By watching the Follow the Brand TV series, you will learn how to differentiate yourself from the competition and build trust with prospective clients. As the saying goes, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So make it one that will set you apart, build confidence, and reflect who you are. Building your 5-star personal brand is a great way to improve your skills and knowledge. If you have any questions for me or any of my guests, please email me at grant.mcgaugh@5starbdm.com. Now, let's jump into our next episode on Follow the Brand TV. Well. Finally, we are here, Mr. Lafayette. I'm going to applaud you for being here because you're out in the West Coast. I think it's still technically midnight, but we see the unicorn has risen. And I appreciate you making this journey with us today. Now, I want to preference my audience, and I brought a lot of my own audience in here today because this is so important. I've been a technologist for the last 20 to 25 years. I pivoted into branding and understanding we have an opportunity that we have not seen in our society, in our culture. You think about the things that have occurred just with television in my own lifetime, not to age myself, but television was a part of my journey. And then getting into, gaming systems, and then getting into the internet, and then getting into cloud computing. What does that look like? And now we are at the fulcrum point, a launching point, I would say, into, it's a big buzzword, the Metaverse. We're going to break that down by one of the industry thought leaders who is leading a cultural movement. I met him at the Gatherverse that he put together about a month or so ago of different thought leaders from around the globe, UX designers, people that are really defining and growing and developing in this new space called the Metaverse. So I want to get the mic to Christopher Lafayette just to introduce himself, and then we're going to get deep into our fireside chat. As he said, we'll start chopping some wood.
Grant, well, I'm happy to be here with everyone today, and good morning, everyone, and happy to be part of the Black Business Expo, which is just so important for sustainability and driving culture and whole entire communities further towards business success. And so I certainly am for all supporting this on such an occasion with the Black Business Olympics.
Well, Chris, and today we're talking about culture, right? That's the theme for day 6. We've had 6 incredible days, incredible speakers. We're going to kick off this morning. And for people that don't know, actually, it's my birthday today. And this is my birthday present to myself, right? And to all of you, we're going to get deep into understanding a little bit more a different light on what's going on in the community of the Metaverse. So my first question I'd like to ask you, Chris, and I want to frame this in a way to have a real meaningful discussion, which is how will the Metaverse reframe human-centered experiences in your humble opinion?
Well, first, Grant, happy birthday.
Thank you.
I know that we're so used to hearing that year in and year out, but I would submit to you that in these particular times, we just don't want to take any moment for granted. So really happy birthday to you. When we think about the Metaverse, and expressly to your question, it's one of the reasons why I formed the platform called Gatherverse, which deals with the humanity-first approach to technology itself. We've, for so many decades, appropriately so, we've put such an emphasis on hardware and software. But now we're heading into a different arena, in a different area, in a different time, where we've become more virtual in the past 24 months than we had the past 24 years. And when we think about the great development that's been built from prototypes and ideations for alpha and beta and all the different devices that we have, we must now take a positive consideration and to ask ourselves to whom this technology has been built for. And it's now at this present moment where we find ourselves that we're in an actual transformational shift into what this has been all about when it comes to the development of technology itself and its humanity first. Ecologically, we've been for so long looking at ecosystems as hardware and software, but ecosystems isn't a set of hardware or software. Ecosystems are people. And so when we look at humanity first standards, I came out with the 7 steps or the 7 standards of the metaverse some months ago in 2021, which deals with humanity first, accessibility, education, quality, community development, safety, privacy, and wellness. Why? At a time where we're so used to defining the metaverse from a tech-centric perspective, why did I take it there? Let's go back some. We need to go back some. When you think about technology, you have to understand, and we must consider that technology would be nothing without art. And art itself, in fact, you can have art without technology, but you cannot have technology without art. And when you think about art and liberal arts, if you will, there's been such a marriage pairing of the two through the ages and dispensations of time, of expression, of creativity, that serves as the gateway into the technical. The technology is what animates the art. But the art itself has and will always be at the forefront. But when we talk about art and design, we must consider, what have we been doing art and design for? To express, to communicate. And we've gone from very early stages, from painting on walls, if you will, to scribing in books, to expressing through our own body language, anatomically. And the more and further that we've been able to communicate beyond voice, or apart from just voice expression, and auditory listening, whether it's tympanic listening or truly ingesting what's being expressed to us, now when we're coming down at this particular point, when we start to think about design and we start to think about technology, they're not too different from one another. But one was born out of the other. It's almost like I read an article a couple of years ago. It was the Harvard Review, and they said on the front cover, it said, "No, we're sorry, Harvard, it's not about technology, it's about the culture." But I said, wait a minute. No, that's not right. Culture is technology. And for far too long, we've been keeping them too separate from one another. And so when we start to think about our rudimentary beginnings and understanding of technology itself, we must begin with art and design. And of that fashion, and the perception therein, be it music, be it aesthetic layouts, typography, space proportions, fonts, style guides, logos, typographic, graphic, colors, and color theory. When we start to think about design itself, that leads us closer to the understanding of why humanity first. Is because we went from design and we went very deep into the technological engine development as we should have. Because in order for us to become more expressive in design, in order for technology to truly ascend, it needs power. And now we're at a point in a place where you're seeing more power. And remember, the more power that's been introduced to the scene, the greater the experience will become. And when we think about to the native understanding of what we'll be touching on today of the metaverse, when we really think about where we're headed is not where we're at today. So the idea was never for us to stare at our devices. The idea was one day to step inside one day and to enter in, and we live in our devices. And so what we're seeing right now is the very next step to that. Why now? Why have we become more virtual in the past 24 months than we have the past 24 years? Well, when we think about disruption of technology, good technology is disrupted by great technology, and great technology is disrupted by even bigger technology. Here in Silicon Valley and elsewhere in other technical hubs, we call that the great disrupt. But never have we been at a time, as we've experienced presently, that the great disruption was not technology, it was a pandemic. And now we've all had to ingress into environments that we never thought that we would be. We've now had to adopt technology that already existed. And now we're coming on the other side of that to find out, wow, it works. That you can take whole entire workforces and put them in remote distributed workforces from their living room and product delivery teams from their living room, and to be able to collaborate virtually, digitally, without being in human-specific direct presence. Now, the greatest technology that's ever been built, the greatest thing that's been built in technology easily within the past 30 years is communication itself. Now, we've all had to enter into a case study and everyone had to participate. And now we've come to find out that now that people have become more virtual and they know that it can work at this great communication powered by the cloud, now that we know that we can do this, now people have begun to wonder, what else can I do beyond communicate? Now here comes the arrival of Web3. Why have we seen such a prolific rise in non-fungible tokens, NFT for short? Why have we seen such a prolific rise in crypto assets beyond fiat currency deal flow? dApps. Why have we been seeing such a rise in fintech unlike any time we've ever? It's not new. NFTs aren't new. Going all the way back to BitDNS, 2011, Counterparty, Colored Coins, 2015, here comes Ethereum, their first NFT. A few more years later, we go into 720 ERC standards, 1155 ERC. NFTs are not new. But why are we seeing such a great growth right now? Well, it kind of takes us back to the ecosystem and the great ecohabitat. Now, with the great ecohabitat, all technologies abide therein. You have artificial intelligence that's flanked by machine learning, deep learning, chatbots, smart assistants, neural networks. You have the acronym XR, extended reality, and that's flanked by augmented reality and virtual reality, haptics, spatial computing. Then you may find robots, and that may be flanked by androids and mechs, fintech, crypto assets, blockchain, so forth and so on. And all these technologies abide within the great ecohabitat centrally. Now, what happens when these technologies begin to grow and scale, but they can begin to pair and merge? Well, that's what brings us into what we call the merge pairing, which is truly the beginning of what we call the smart city. Now, every futurist in February 2020, by the time March 2020 came along, that was the beginning of the ending of their career. Because no futurist knew that we were headed this way. None knew that we were going to be disrupted by a pandemic and accelerated into the great virtual construct communication to where one day we're going to find ourselves very soon interacting with each other, human eye, resolution, face-to-face, haptic feedback handshakes, and being telepresent with one another and our virtual counterparts and face-to-face with our virtual smart assistants. You think Siri will forever live on our phone? One day you will walk inside your own home and you'll have sushi face-to-face with Siri, Cortana, Bixby, Google Smart Assistant, Alexa, so forth and so on. Your own self. We'll touch on some of that in a little bit.
Let's continue on this conversation because you woke us up, right? I think everybody should be completely awake at this point in time. The coffee has kicked in. I know it's kicked in for me.
Have at it.
Next question, because you're on the right track. We're talking about culture when we're talking about technology and this great new bold world that we're in. How do you see these implementations of the metaverse, in which I love how you coin, like there's one metaverse and there are many virtual worlds, making it metaversal? How do you see that developing around the world? And specifically, what is the opportunity for Black business?
You know, Grant, the biggest problem with the metaverse is that nobody knows what the metaverse is. But everyone swears that they do. You know, it's not proto-metaverses. It's not metaverses. The different constructs and the different manifestations in the metaverse that you see today are metaversal. And the 1.0 version of the metaverse still remains in its infancy today. We certainly haven't reached the time of the great holodecks of Roddenberry and the great literary works of Ernest Cline's Oasis of Ready Player One, his ontological anthropocentric simulation immersive system. We're not there yet. Where we are today when we talk about the metaverse, and let's put a nice definition on it. I'll define it. The metaverse is a virtual ecosystem of interaction and communication. That means we're not waiting for the arrival of the metaverse. The metaverse has been here for some time already. It's just become made manifest and apparent. There are animals to this day that they find in the Marianas Trench that they've just now recently discovered as of late, yet that animal has always been present. It's just you and I have come to find out its existence. And I'll add on top of that is that we as a whole in society have been contributing and building towards the metaverse every time we type into our phones, every book that's been written through the ages and dispensations of time, all the way back to the times of the Grecians, of great documentation and literary works, whether it's Socrates or Plato or Aristotle. Now, I said all that to say is we'll take it all the way back maybe to the 1800s or 1900s or 1930 with Pygmalion Spectacles, where we started to see more modern day literary works speak about virtual and augmented reality, which are two great components of the metaverse itself. But the metaverse is here and we've been contributing to it handily. And when we talk about our Black communities, let's talk about that for a moment. The Black community undoubtedly has been driving culture and influence in fashion, music, business, technology, mass consumer and consumption globally for decades. Undoubtedly. The sports theater, the music theater, for decades. Why is that so important? Because in every fashion of the metaverse that we see and that we interact with, at some point, it's taken its dictates from something physical. And the physical narrative will reflect the digital manifestation. And so everything that we see operating here in the physical will turn into a digital twin manifestation and operation. So when we talk about our Black communities, what we need to know is that, one, we've been contributing to it greatly and influencing its construct. There's not too many people on the face of this world that can say this, no matter the color, no matter the gender, than myself. But the reality is for us being some of the greatest contributors of the now present metaverse, we have received the least amount of benefit of this great contribution of the metaverse. What the metaverse does for us and its opportunity presently and where we are headed is that it allows us to be able to exercise greater autonomy, establishment of financial wealth and fidelity, greater means of communication, democratized tools and accessibility to access to things that many people in our community cannot afford. And now the level field is being balanced to where now we can take advantage of these, and now we can be able to communicate to one another, not be limited to the business in our backyards, and to be able to more abundantly demonstrate what it is that we have to offer in terms of product and service on open markets globally. And I say globally because soon we won't just be limited to American deal flow in dollars either, in fiat currency. The prolific rise of crypto assets distributed on a blockchain ledger is real. The more refinement that comes into play, the more balanced the whole great global world market will become. We will be referring to virtual worlds and virtual cities as commonly as we refer to Atlanta, San Francisco, New York, London, Los Angeles. We will begin to migrate into these nascent virtual world constructs that are present now, and we will begin to settle in these virtual spaces. And once we begin to settle into these virtual spaces, we'll begin to buy, sell, trade, and distribute. And once a buy, sell, trade ecosystem has begun in fully immersive environments virtually, the only thing next to arise after that is ethical establishment, which ethics stem from morals, and ethics are agreed upon rules. And once you begin to have ethical establishment, because there must take that place when buy, sell, trade begins and barter, once that begins to happen, then we find ourselves building decentralized public and private sector governments. That's right. We'll have whole entire governmental systems virtually that never existed today, that never existed before, but will drive whole entire industry and will have real world implications. That means everything that we see now physically, a digital manifestation with physical reaction to physical markets, is a complete game change in the way that we think about business today and how we operate.
Well, I tell you, Chris, you taking this to a whole nother level of thought and reflection of how we are on this precipice of what is going to transform and unfold in enterprise business. You've seen tremendous amount of money already going into the metaversal space. Let's just say you see the Apples, the Googles, you see billions of dollars trying to build out their piece of the pie. Because now you talked about a level playing field, how does, in the Black community, $1.5 trillion economic base foundationally, but rooted in a consumer construct for the most part. How does that transform as we become more entrepreneurial in the metaverse? And so my question to you is, what should Black businesses and entrepreneurs be doing or getting ready to do now as they move from the physical world to Web 2.0, social constructs, social media, those type of things, web design, and now have an opportunity to design and create commerce in the metaverse? What advice would you give?
Sure. That's a manifold answer to that, because if you're already a business owner, migrate into the metaverse deeper. Bring your business further into digital. It's no longer at some point going to be sufficient for you just to have a website. Learn all you can about the nascent virtual worlds that exist that are ready to be inhabited by the first ones that are going to come in and settle, to be able to plant their flag in there and begin building out their operations as a destination point for people to be able to do business with you in more than one way beyond online interactive communication by way of a form. We're now getting to that point in that space here around the corner where we'll be able to have people walk into our virtual operation and we'll be able to do full conductive business, and to be able to extend our customer service apparatus, which, as you know, Grant, is so key and central to the success of any good business enterprise. You'll be able to extend your customer service 100-fold in ways you've never been able to through a phone or through a chat box, number one. Number two is what I would say about those that have not entered into the entrepreneurial theater. Let's chop wood. Because along with this great migration into virtual world destinations and the development of these virtual worlds, might you build your own world? Number one. Two, when you start to think about the ascendant rise and the key principles of Web3 and decentralization being its overarching banner, now autonomy doesn't seem too far out. And there are people that will buy, sell, and trade and deal and operate with you, and they're willing to do it, no matter the color, no matter the gender. They're willing to do it so long as it seems like it could benefit their ecosystems. So to me, the sky is the limit. There's not going to be a specific one bracket that I'm going to suggest under the banner of entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship, a big part of that is about vision for what's next and what we don't know about. Becoming a pioneer, you're either going to go and find two ways once you enter into the forest itself. Either you're already going to go down a path that's already been well tended and cleared for you, or you and I are going to have to go in that forest and clear these paths ourselves. Now, someone may be listening and saying, well, what does this have to do with the metaverse? It has everything to do with the metaverse, because the metaverse is the next open frontier. And when you look at the next open frontier and the frontier that you abide in, the odds are most likely the city that you sit in now was a frontier space. Somebody had the wherewithal to go there and plant exactly where you live with the roof over your head to establish that and incorporate that and become a city, a county, state. What I'm saying is right now, the self-same thing that we've been seeing through the ages and dispensations of time, and if that's too far for you to go too back, bring it into the industrial age way of thinking, where you see the establishment of neighborhoods, towns, and businesses. Now bring that into a whole virtual migration that is still wholly has not been penetrated, yet it will. You've never had a better opportunity than you do now than enter into the metaverse with a great sound idea don't fall in love with your own idea and to begin building into your virtual space, or you build the virtual world itself. So now, if it was me knowing what I know, what would I encourage someone to build when it comes to the metaverse? Me personally, I would begin building my own virtual world. That's the taller mountain to climb, but there could be great reward that comes with that, because the virtual world with your own mapped out grid system, now you could be able to start selling out part and parcel your own land and renting that out, so long as you can power that with consistency and that you can deliver with that as far as the people that are going to own spaces within your virtual frontier.
Well, Chris, you just brought me to my next question, because that is, I mean, that's how I see it. It's a bold new world. We're all in these ships. We know it's out there. We believe it's out there, whether you believe in a flat world or a round world. You're like, I am going to run into new world, and I'm going to find my new place, my new home out there as we traverse into the metaverse. So my question is, because this is important, especially for, hey, yeah, I hear what you're saying, Chris. I want to do this, but this is different from employing somebody to build out a website like that. That's a commodity right now. What questions would you ask somebody that is a metaverse design agency before you hire them? I mean, what do we need to know?
Anyone that tells me that they're a metaverse design agency is immediately suspect to me.
Okay, let's hear it.
You're immediately suspect. I'd rather deal with a design firm or a creative agency than a metaverse design agency. Because if someone says that they're a metaverse design agency, what exactly is it that you're going to be building that doesn't already exist, that we already called it something under a different name? Again, the metaverse is the colloquial understanding of what it is that we've entered into wholly when it comes to virtual itself, and that we've become more virtual altogether than we have ever before. That's the metaverse, is the binder, if you will. So when we start to talk about agencies and design platforms, we still want to be able to go towards traditional. We don't want to migrate away from our traditional understanding. And when I say traditional digital, we don't want to migrate and move away from that understanding of what it is when we start talking about who can build a metaversal component for me. It'll still be the same designer, hopefully, that built out your ecosystem before. But she or he or they will need to be able to understand more sound design principles, such as 3D design and engagement, and platforms like Maya, Blender, or Unreal Engine, or dealing with Unity. They'll need to understand what exactly are the components when we start talking about migrating into virtual environments with greater ingress. And when we start talking about spatial computing or virtual and augmented reality, I want to know, do they understand AR Core, AR Kit, Vuforia, Eighth Wall? Do they understand these technologies? Do they understand the arrival and the new tools that Adobe is building for the metaverse? Will they understand these things? So give me the classic designer that actually understands, on a very rudimentary level, good sound digital design. And that person could be brought further into understanding the metaverse and building for the metaverse itself. So anyone that says we can build out a metaverse, it really depends on what it is that you're saying, more narrowly specific, that you're saying that you can build. Now, if you're saying it necessarily under something like Web3, that may be a little bit different story, because now you're saying I could be able to build a chain or a blockchain running through your website or through your platform, where I can have it where you can create your own crypto assets, or you can be able to get different NFTs minted and things like that. But anyone that's telling me that they're going to be a metaverse agency, I wouldn't put my money on that.
5-Star BDM, Brand Development Masters, is a professional consulting and advisory group keenly focused on business development services for the small to mid-sized business and entrepreneurs. Although every business is unique, they often share business development challenges that can be addressed through smart branding. Services include process improvement and operations, digital strategy and transformation, business intelligence, digital marketing, and personal branding. Our business and personal branding company has helped a number of professionals and organizations to optimize and grow. This results in more business, more opportunities, better reach, positive outcomes. Visit www.5starbdm.com today to learn more.
Now, see, that's very understanding. So you don't it's a bold new world, right? So there's people out there that will take advantage of you because you don't know. So we want to educate our audience, and what you just said is so important. Build what's already kind of been there, and then moving forward. There's a lot of VR designers and UX designers and extended reality. And there's a lot of things that people's like, I just don't know. You don't need to really know how to build a website, but you need to know how to use it. And I think that's so important. So
I'll also say this too, when you start talking about the development aspect of it as well.
Mhm.
There's layers to this, because just because you know Unreal Engine, you could be a C++ developer. It doesn't necessarily know that you intimately understand what's needed for the metaverse experience of the great promise of what it is today and for tomorrow. Because we're still dealing with perceptual sciences and really understanding what are environmental fidelity, contextual fidelity, cognitive fidelity, intentional, unintentional fidelity, and human factors play in the role of each and every experience that we go into when we're dealing with the virtual construct itself. It's still very wild and underappreciated in its scope, meaning considering the magnitude and the volume of what it represents and what it does and what it will do. See, when we start talking about going into uninhabited lands, best believe that there's a lot of things we don't understand about the wild meanderings of that world itself and what that means for us when it comes to dealing with our own conscience, when it comes to dealing with our own body, our whole anatomical reaction to these actual virtual experiences. What does it do to our ocular development? What does it do to do we dream? Once I spent all this time in virtual reality, when I go to sleep at night, am I dreaming something real, or am I dreaming something that I experienced in a virtual construct? What does this actually mean for me and my perception? So when we start talking about these virtual experiences, now we're really touching on something much more visceral and deep, especially when we get closer to human eye resolution technology, to where it'll be indiscernible to the human eye what it is that I'm actually looking at. I've been in some very compelling environments, more so than most people that walk the face of this planet. I've been in more virtual environments than I care to count. Some are very compelling, and I know what's coming down the pipeline, and it will be indiscernible to the human eye and to perception of the actual cognitive understanding and intake of what it is that I am visually seeing. But here's the thing. Virtual reality is still in its infancy, meaning that we've only developed sight, so it's still in the womb. We have much more to go when it comes to developing. Look, virtuality isn't a single variable equation. It's a multivariable equation. That means there's sight. That means there's touch. That means there's sound. There's taste, all the senses when we're dealing with perception itself. And so we've come a long way, but we have much more further to go. Truth be told, Zoom, Hangouts, StreamYard, and so many other different platforms are better representations of the metaverse than these whole virtual worlds.
I'm telling you, Chris, you are definitely exciting. This has been a tremendous discussion. But I want to turn the mic over to you to tell us more about what you're doing, because you just touched on something like the neural networks. So when I look at some use cases and talk about how we can use it to help people when it comes to mental health, and you've gone through, you've done some things in the Gatherverse. You've got another event that's taking place. Kind of walk us through that, and then tell us a little bit about hip hop coins. I like that.
Sure. Well, with Gatherverse, we had the biggest metaverse-based event in the world for Q1 of 2022 this year, Grant, as you know. And we were able to really bring speakers from around the world to talk about humanity first standards of education and accessibility and wellness and equality and community development and safety and privacy and so forth and so on, even climate. And to be candid, I didn't expect for Gatherverse to grow as big and strong as it did, and as it now has, and has turned into a full-blown brand. And so with that said, now we're moving further into more series of events that are coming down the pipeline. We have Free Spring, which is a mental wellness summit in March. We have 3We, which is a Web3 platform and summit that's going to be launching in September, dealing with Web3 and human sustainability from that lens. We have a sports summit that we're launching this summer, getting ready to announce here within a couple of weeks. We have a music summit that we're getting ready to launch and announce soon, and a food summit. All of these things, how do we approach the world of food, agriculture? How do we approach the world of sports and music when we start to look at it from the metaverse? And so with Hip Hop Coins is the first NFT hip hop platform in the world. And we launched that early last year with great success and great arrival. And there's a lot of exciting things that we're going to be announcing here soon when it comes to Hip Hop Coins. And look, hip hop is a universal language of all cultures. And so for me, there was a time where I knew that in the 80s and the 90s, you could go and buy an Elvis coin, but I couldn't go buy a Tupac commemorative coin. Now I can create that virtual Tupac commemorative coin, and I can set it as an NFT and to be able to sell and be able to purchase and have an expression of that. Now, there's a lot of different things that we have to be mindful of, because I'm not just going to go sell a Tupac coin just because I can. We have to be mindful of different patent considerations of their families, and all the different things that come with selling people's images and likenesses, what's real, what's not, and what type of blockchains are we operating on, proof of stake, proof of work, proof of history, all the different types of blockchains that are out there. What is the established, true, official, bona fide, certifiable blockchain where I feel that safe in investing serious amounts of deal flow and capital that I know that it will, on a collector's value, have some type of value for the future? So there's a lot of considerations that we have to look at. And so what we've done with Hip Hop Coins is to be able to explore the world of hip hop and NFTs. And we look so much forward to working with so many different incredible musicians that fill this in.
Well, tell me now. Now we've got some more time because I want to continue this conversation, because this has been interesting. We got a riveted audience out here, Chris, and they're tuning in. And you've been able to do what others maybe have wished to do it or just couldn't do. Now you're a professional speaker. I call you the thought leader on the Metaverse movement. You're in the hotbed of Silicon Valley. You know about all these other tech hubs that are out there. You know about different incubators, accelerators. You talked about how you've gone into, I call it, a deep space in the virtual reality experience. Because one thing I'd like the audience to understand is what you're going to consume. This is how I look at it. What you're going to consume in the metaverse are experiences, deep emotional experiences, mental experiences that will be connected to then physical experiences. I liked how you walked us through that you're in a metaverse, or let's just say a virtual world. And let's say you go to a coffee shop, right? Let's just say that. And then now you want to order a cup of coffee using your NFT that you have for coins. And as you're going through that process, it's automated within the system. And then you'll go to your door, I don't know, let's say 10, 20 minutes, whatever is time allows. And a drone has now delivered to you freshly made coffee, man. Just talk about that a little bit.
Well, let's add on top of that. Let's enhance that some. Can we, Grant?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Now, me sitting at the cafe, meeting you for coffee. I'm sitting here in my place of residence. You're sitting in your place of residence. Your whole virtual cafe is completely different from my virtual experience of what I like to sit in, what type of cafe I would like to sit in. Yet here we are sitting with each other, human eye resolution, face to face, haptic feedback, handshakes, fist bumps, elbow bumps, and everything in between. And indeed, there gets a knock on our doors delivering that coffee by drone. But here's the rub. I'm actually not sitting in that virtual construct, and neither are you. But I did go and get my cup of coffee and my cup of tea. I'm actually in my kitchen making breakfast while my artificial intelligent version of myself is sitting there communicating and interacting on my behalf with your interactive artificial intelligent version of yourself and interacting with it, conducting business on our behalf. So now when we start to think about that, when we start to look at NPCs, if you will, or system agents, now they're taking our image and likeness, and all of a sudden, my avatar, that is an NFT, is ingressing and operating transmetropolitan into different virtual world constructs across the metaverse globe. And so now all of a sudden, my agents, plural, can go do business for me while I'm asleep in bed, when I'm tending to real world business, and business never stops. That means buy, sell, and trade at such an extreme premium level, unlike anything we've ever known before. We always talk about we'll never clear all the things off our desk. What if we did? What if we did clear the things off our desk? And what if we went into a whole new level? Look, we never thought that we would see the rise of one multi-trillion-dollar companies in any industry, but specifically the technology industry, yet here we are. But let me add a little caveat into that as well. With this great grand prolific rise, without true inclusion of all cultures to build the metaverse, the metaverse itself, its foundational construct, at the center of the metaverse and at the heart of the metaverse is community. And if we don't have all communities build and contribute to the metaverse today, then our foundational construct will never be there. And from my lens, the warning is that it will lead to the ultimate demise of the metaverse because we've excluded communities of millions of people contributing to its success and its healthy growth. The metaverse is powered by people and not profits. You must have people in human engineering, human centricity to sustain the metaverse itself as it begins its great ascendancy. Else, it will go towards its demise and it will find itself into the trough of disillusionment coming from a peak of inflated interest. And from that great failed data will come the slope of enlightenment onto the plateau of productivity when we start to think about Gartner's hype cycle. So I said all that to say is that our AI constructs that speak on our behalf best speak on our behalf and not from the confines of someone else's genius and creativity, so-called, that's representing me. I am the best person that can represent me, not somebody sitting in Apple. So in other words, towards Apple and Google's success, they need people that look like me, that look like you. Why? Because as great, as prolific as the rise financially that Apple has become, I believe that if Apple had greater inclusion initiatives, it would be even more dramatically successful. And perhaps we're looking at a lower version of what it actually could be as a higher version if we had more communities involved in developing and building out this great metaversal construct that is the singular metaverse that we're all building into. So with all that said, it behooves us in our Black communities, because we missed the apps evolution. We absolutely did. We're seeing platforms and companies from the dawning of 2005 to 2007 that are part of this $1 trillion+ valuation. What does that mean for us? What does that mean for human sustainability? It means everything under the throes of business. And the metaverse is the great leap. Remember, technology moves in increments, shifts, and leaps. Incrementation, an iOS update, an Android update. Someone says, man, iPhone hasn't come out with anything in so long new and innovative. Well, go trade your iPhone 13 Max for your iPhone 4, and you'll see the great development that's happened. Then we go from incrementation to a shift. Shift is hardware, phone, desktop, laptop, tablet, HMD, head-mounted display. Now, when you think about that, we see great growth that happens with that. These devices that we own. But then every once in a while, we come to what we call a leap. Now, a leap, we don't get those often, Grant. A leap, think the internet, the cloud, blockchain, the metaverse. Why a leap? Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, Industry 4.0. Why a leap? Because a leap affects everyone in the world. My hardware doesn't impact the whole world. My incrementations of iOS, not everyone has an iPhone. But a leap, the app's evolution, leap, changes the whole entire landscape. When we start to look at how we address the reality of where we're at and where we might be headed. And so I said all that to say, in part, that when we start to look at where we're at in the growth of technology and the leap, if the metaverse isn't built by everyone, the metaverse will be built by no one.
Chris, this is we got to step back and really think about that. We've got to participate, number one, in where we're at right now. I had an earlier segment in talking about that and understanding how these social networks operate and that they need data. And they're pulling the data from wherever they can get it. And if we don't participate, then it's not there. Now, I'll give you a for instance. Let's just say you Google the word man, M-A-N, just man itself. And you look at the images, and you will see predominantly 80% of the people that will be pictured will probably be Caucasian. Now, why is that? That is not a reality. But that's the reality to that machine because that is what it is sensing. That's the data that it has. So there's an inherent bias already in these enormous search engines. How do we now change that? Because that's there. That's there. Do we solicit these giant tech companies like, hey, you need to get more input because you are not reflecting the whole, you're reflecting a very small minority. How does that work? What do we do about that?
Let me be candid with you, Grant.
Yes.
First off, we've thus far to where the arrival point and where we are here in 2022, that the majority of the technology that we enjoy, though it's been heavily influenced by Black and brown communities, and Asian, if you will, truly, and Caucasian, the majority of it has been built by white males. And when we start to look at a polycultural development versus monocultural development in the ecosystem, we must take in consideration ecoculture, which is human characteristics that are permeated in and throughout technological ecosystems themselves. And that when you hire somebody that looks like me, I don't take away from your ecosystem. I'm not an affirmative action. I don't take away from ecosystems. When you hire someone that looks like me, I level up your entire ecosystem. When you enter me into a homogenized space, I immediately stand out. And think about it. A group of people, they go on a safari. And they go to the Serengeti, if you will. They go into a safari, and everybody's got their camera in hand. And they're like, okay, here they come. Here come the lions. And everybody's taking a picture of the lions. the hyenas, and the zebras. And everybody's taking a picture. But there's one person that's not. She's taking a picture of a brown beetle. And so everybody gets back to their destination point, and they're saying, hey, look at this picture. Look at this shot I got. Look at this shot I got. And this one person says, hey, here's a picture of the brown beetle that I took. Everybody stops for that moment, and they took a look at that brown beetle. Why? Because it's different than anything else that anyone else is looking at. And when you bring that into an ecosystem of people, that's a different lens and a different perspective. Fundamentally, the metaverse is interactive design. And as we talked about in the beginning of this conversation, design is the communication apparatus and tool of humanity. And that comes from the confine of our minds, our emotions, from who we are, from our soul. And if you don't have a great representation of a diverse chorus to contribute to the powerful play that exists, Walt Whitman, and you may contribute a verse. If you miss a whole section of instruments in the great orchestratic rise of Beethoven and Moses, and all your woodwinds are gone, what song are you playing now? It doesn't work. In other words, this is the cunning of the metaverse. It'll either be the greatest rise and sustainer of technology we've ever seen, or from my lens perspective, it will lead to the greatest demise of technology we've seen. All these things that have gone up, they surely can come down. The lack of inclusion in culture will be the ultimate demise of technology itself. I've seen a platform get funded over $6 billion in Florida called Magic Leap.
Yes.
It's the greatest failure of the entire extended reality ecosystem. And the biggest reason that Magic Leap failed, and they're trying so hard to get back in the game, the biggest reason they failed is a lack of culture. They did not have an appreciation for the representation of communities that can help lead to its great ascendancy of what it can do with that tremendous amount of deal flow and dollars. What does this have to do with the metaverse, Chris? I came to hear about the metaverse. It's got everything to do with the metaverse. Do you know the problem is, Grant? We're too busy looking at companies as unicorns. When will we begin to look at people with an appreciable understanding that people are unicorns of value?
Yes, that is the unique perspective. And I understand that completely. You even talked about brand. You understand brand. You understand marketing. And that unique value proposition. I think we're stating our unique value proposition. Here we are as a culture, we represent a couple of $1 trillion, let's just say, in business, with probably a opportunity in 1 year of 300 billion in growth. And we are part of a $20 trillion economy that doesn't invest in it. That's, to me, insane. Just based on the dollars, you just say, why would you not spend your money on a growth into a growth market that has great potential? As you mentioned earlier, with the brand setting that we've done in music and in industry and in entertainment and in sports, and now we will do it in business, that needs to change. But now we have a world economy to work with. And in the NFT world, when people really start to understand what that truly is, talk about uniqueness and value and being able to change the game changer. How do we change the game? That is, it could ultimately, I talked earlier just a few days ago about most of that wealth, and you kind of talked about most of the wealth that's been created in the world right now was created less than 10 years ago. So we're not 300 years behind. We are not. We are right where we need to be. But we need to take advantage of the opportunity, and we need to be prepared. And that's what they call lucky.
And let me piggyback on that real quick.
Yes.
As we get closer to our conclusion here. Look, diversity, equity, and inclusion leaders of technology companies, I'm not holding my breath on them. They're not an advocate for Christopher Lafayette. I know that they aim to do good internally in the companies, but they're not the gateway entry into my success. A big part of my success, first and foremost, is the grace and mercy that I've been given every day spiritually. That's one. Number two, entrepreneurship. Go and build it. Go in that forest and chop wood. I submit to the entire Black community of this world, the best thing you can do today in business is to take the biggest sacrifice that you can of all the things that you think you need, reevaluate what you actually need, and do everything that you can in business to become an entrepreneur. Grant, when I came to Silicon Valley, with black colored skin. I have a book announcement coming out soon. I wrote a book. It's called Surviving in Silicon Valley. 50,000 plus words. When I came to Silicon Valley, I was living out of my car and I was sleeping outside of Google and NASA. And I was living in hacker spaces, hotels, and other people's sofas. And I went and I learned as much as I could about technology, being that my dad was a technologist in UC Berkeley when we were living in the ghettos of Oakland, East Oakland. It was unusual for anyone in our neighborhood to have a parent in technology, let alone a dad. I benefited from that. And I came to Silicon Valley, a tale of two cities here in the Bay Area, from Oakland, California to the peninsula. And I came out there in search of opportunity. At some point, people started to ask me to come speak because they liked what I had to say. That wasn't my intention to become what I've become in business today. I'm grateful, and I know it's a blessing. I count them every day. But the reality is that I'm one of the biggest voices in the world in the metaverse. I'm undoubtedly the biggest Black voice of the metaverse in the world, and that's a shame. Why? Because there should be so many more of us. I go into whole entire audiences of people that do not look like me. I engage with so many different types of people that do not look like me, and that's fine. I'm down with whoever's down to want to chop some wood. I'm good with that. But now we're talking about something beyond a preference here. We're talking about sustainability. Now, in the time of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, we saw a great civil uprising. And what I saw from that wasn't just a bunch of pissed off young people. Some of those people don't know what's next. And if you think that education is teaching what the metaverse is, education and academics isn't paid enough, even in colleges, to learn. And how would they be able to do it when technology moves as fast as it does in its curriculum? Marco Rubio said, he says, Silicon Valley is more advanced in technology than the United States government. And that was years ago.
But I submit to you this. And that was true. But what happens when the technology becomes more accelerated, advanced than the technologist? That's how fast it's moving. But you want to know what's slowing it down? Go look and see what's happening over Ukraine right now. We think our gas rates are high. Go look at all the famine and the supply disruption that's happening in Africa right now. The amount of death. So I'm saying all that to say is that what I am so excited about the new iPhone and the new Oculus and all these devices that come out. May we never forget that in business, we're imbued with the opportunity to give back. And so for me, and moving forward for the rest of my career, I've dedicated towards giving back to humanity first when it comes to business and making sure that we're giving back. As I've always been taught, give back that which was freely given unto you. I've been taught that spiritually, and I take that physically as well. And so for me, it starts spiritually with being so grateful to have this opportunity to explore and to understand what I've come to know and understand. And now is the time to be able to give back and to enhance and enrich the lives of others. And in that can become economic sustainable as well. And the power of giving back. It's a different game now. This isn't just the United Negro College Fund that we're talking about. And mine is a terrible, terrible thing to waste. A deal of an opportunity is a terrible thing to waste. An opportunity to build the metaverse is a terrible thing to waste. So what will we do with the time that's given for business? Will we build it, or will we continue to watch other people build it? So this time next year, I challenge Black Business Expo, meet me in the metaverse. I will meet you there. Let's chop wood.
Christopher Lafayette, you are amazing. I thank you so much for taking the time this morning to share from your heart about our community, about our brand as a community, and our call to action. That is a call to action, and I hear that call, and I want to answer that call because it's so important. So I want to thank you. Hopefully we'll get Yvette come on back on. I think we're over at the mid time of the hour. And then before we take off, Chris, I just want to make sure, what is the best way for us, for anyone to get in contact with you? What is the best way?
Chris at ChristopherLafayette.com, or hit me on LinkedIn, or you can hit me on my email address. Hit me up. The reasons that people hit me up, some people need mentorship and guidance. I'm always down to help people with whatever time that I can afford to help give people what they need freely, to help businesses and enterprises to move and take the next step, especially in concerning the metaverse. People hit me up nowadays about the NFTs, metaverse, Web3, and so forth and so on. And so for me, it's really important that we as a whole realize that we don't have to be afraid to become the pioneers that's inherent in us. We don't have to be afraid to do it because we don't have to build it alone, because no one can build it alone. And so we're always stronger when we build together. And I'm certainly looking forward to exploring with all those people that I know that have showed up today. I know the numbers are high, and I'm looking forward to seeing what it is that you're going to build and contribute in the metaverse with the humanity first standard narrative.
Oh, we're definitely going to build with that. That's what we live to do. An opportunity. I've been afforded a lot of different opportunities to utilize the tools at my disposal. I tell people all the time, man, I wish I had these kinds of tools in the 80s and the 90s. Just the ability to communicate, just like we're doing right now. So as we look at Black business opportunity, and we need to come together. I think the biggest problem we have is our separation we need to understand, first of all, there are many groups of Black technologists that are out there. They're siloed, and that's the problem. Is that we need to bring them together. You're part of a lot of these different think tanks.
Shout out to Blacks in Technology Bit with our friends over at Bit. Shout out to Blavity and Afrotech. Shout out to Black Technology Mentorship Program with so many people that we have over there, and so many other different organizations that are siloed that are really doing really great work. Shout out to Black Orlando Tech. And so there's so many different organizations that are out there. Shout out to UNCF. There's so many organizations and people that are doing so good out there. But the reality, we haven't done far enough. And it's time that we come together and really Voltron and unify up so that we can make some substantive and true impact. Thank you for having me be part of this experience.